Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and this is the Storyteller Forecast for Cancer for February 2017. Go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, see what's new on my blog. I write on astrology and other topics, and soon to be released or just released, depending on when you're watching this, I will have a series called Astrology and Crystals on my blog, so you can see what crystals are really great for your sign. So what's going on in the month of February? We have eclipses, which are life-changing events for many people. We have Venus retrograde, shadow period getting stronger. Venus rules love, beauty, and money. So you definitely want to know about that. So I'm calling the theme for Cancers for this month, allowing massive miracles to pour in, basically, allowing in miracles. So the reason for this is because most of you will experience the solar eclipse, and for the rest of you who are not experiencing the solar eclipse in the ninth house, you have other energy populating the ninth house. So basically all placements will have strong energy in the ninth house, and the ninth house is the house of miracles. Miracles can come in any way, but it's basically the stretching beyond the mundane world, you know. So allowing in massive miracles. There's an opportunity every solar eclipse we have to have new things come in. I always talk about astrological potentials like ingredients. The Italian parts of my family were very dominating in my experience, and I always relate everything back to food. So I hear people say sometimes that good potentials are sitting around them astrologically and that nothing happens, and occasionally someone will say astrology is not right or accurate, and I don't think that's true. In fact, I know for sure that that's not true. What is happening is that astrological potentials will sometimes deliver something right into your lap, but more often than not, it brings a counter of ingredients. So if you leave the room with this counter of ingredients to make, we'll say, an apple pie, and you come back in the room and you see the ingredients and you say, where's the apple pie? Well, you didn't make it. You have to use the ingredients to make the apple pie. They're sitting there as potential apple pie sitting right there on the counter. You gotta make the apple pie, you know? We gotta have a chance to take an active role in our destiny and not just let life happen to us. And these astrological potentials give us a chance to work with and align our will with the divine will for the things that are sitting as potentials to come in for us. So for Cancer placements, there is this energy of miracles coming in. There are also a lot of other ways this can come in. And again, this is for early, middle, and late degree placements. So regardless of where your rising sign degree is, or regardless of when your birthday is, this ninth house focus is intact for you, but it's only the early and middle degree placements that have the solar eclipse happening there. The late degree placements have the solar eclipse happening in the 8th house, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to let you know that even your late degree placements, what I'm saying is still relevant for you, just for different reasons. So the ninth house can bring, energy in the ninth house can bring focus on long distance travel, adventures of any kind, including armchair warrior adventures, writing, speaking, teaching, learning, studying, researching, editing, long distance travel, different cultures, international business, interacting with people from different countries, even if you're not leaving your country. So many opportunities can open up there for people with these placements. A chance to study, a chance to teach, a chance to learn, a chance to travel, a chance to expand consciousness, a chance to advance spiritually. The ninth house rules religion as well as spiritual studies. And so sometimes a solar eclipse here can bring a breakthrough in a belief system or a way of seeing things. And any of the other things that we talked about. So for the late degree placement, so basically the last 10 days or so of the birthday, sign, or 20 to 29 degrees if you're watching for your rising sign, your solar eclipse placement is going to be in the 8th house. And the 8th house has to do with the unseen realms, psychology, the mysteries, astrology is in there. It has to do with deep intimacy and power and partnership, other people's resources. It's called the house of other people's money. inheritances, things like that. So something new opening up. So it's interesting that even though this solar eclipse that's on February 26th, it's a new moon solar eclipse in Pisces at 8 degrees, it's happening as an opening. You know, a solar eclipse is like a new moon times 3. New moons bring new things, they're openings. Solar eclipse brings it times 3. Big openings, or openings in 3 different areas of experience. But it's also an ending to a cycle that started at the beginning of 2015, because that's when we started the Pisces Virgo eclipse cycle, and this eclipse is the last one of those. So something that started at that time, something that came up at that time, is likely coming to a conclusion or nearing a conclusion. Sometimes there's between 4 and 6 months after the final eclipse in a cycle for things to integrate, but you can see an end drawing near. But it's interesting how it's a closing, but it's an opening. So the lunar eclipse is on February 10th. It's a lunar eclipse in Leo. So that's a full moon times 3. The drama, the completion, the fruition, the accomplishment times 3. So lunar eclipse usually have endings. And sometimes it's an ending that is sought after. You know, you've been working on something. Maybe someone graduates, from school, or a child graduates from school, or you're finishing a thesis, or you're finishing an art project, or you're ending some chapter in your life. And that's usually bittersweet. You know, you're excited for the next step and excited for the accomplishment, but then you're also like, sad and nostalgic about what is passing now. So full moons tend to be emotional. And sometimes it's happy tears, sometimes it's bittersweet tears, and sometimes it's just straight up drama. So there could be straight up drama with anything in life, but particularly the early degree placements have more of a chance for siblings or relatives that are not parents or kids. Although everyone has a chance for something with their kids to come up because Leo rules children. But the third house, where the early degree placements are experiencing this, or some of the early degree placements will experience this, is in the house of your brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, your neighbors, also your car, your devices. So you might have drama with your car, drama with your devices. Whenever I see a lunar eclipse happening in or near the third house, I always give the standard warning: you need to really be very careful when you're driving, more so than ever. And manifestations from the lunar eclipse don't just always happen right around it. It can happen a month before, so really all of January, all of February, into even March, there's this energy of tension in that house, and that includes your car, that includes your devices. So be really careful driving. And if you're still texting or talking on the phone while you're driving, just stop doing that. This would be a really great time to stop doing that, because it's not helping anybody. And we did live before we had access to these things, and we will live, more likely to live, if people aren't doing that while they're driving. So just be very, very careful. I had some interesting experiences when I had a lunar eclipse cycle going in my third house. Now, historically, I don't have drama with my cars that, we all have different placements in our chart where we tend to carry more baggage or whatever. And historically, my car has not been the center or of that focus. However, when the eclipses were there, during the years that there was an eclipse cycle hitting in that house, I had 3 things happen to my car. I had a snowy branch fall down and crush my windshield when it was parked in my driveway. I opened with the little button my passenger window, and it cracked. And then someone was driving my car with me in it, and someone else who we actually knew fell asleep while driving and plowed into the back of the car at like 40 or 50 miles an hour. When we were stopped, everything turned out okay for everybody. But it's a serious amount of drama for the car in a short amount of time. And it was all when this eclipse cycle was going on in the third house. So I always think of that when I see this. So I'm putting you on high alert there, not to be scared, but to be cautious and to make sure you have windshield coverage. I always like to mention having windshield coverage when I see this happening, because if you have that coverage, it usually doesn't cost that much more. Or glass coverage, general glass coverage, if you did it beforehand, before you have an issue, you could have no deductible. I learned this when I went through this whole thing. That's why I'm mentioning it, because it was a $500 deductible to fix my windshield because I didn't have the glass coverage. But they said if you had the glass coverage, then it wouldn't have cost anything. So I'm like, ah, man, I need to make sure people know about that. So even though some of the early degree placements will have this lunar eclipse happen in the third house, you all have fair game to have it in the second house. So all the middle degree placements and some of the early degree placements are going to have the effects of the lunar eclipse happen in the second house, which is the house of finances. And the house of finances, again, could be like you've accomplished something, you've reached a financial goal, you've gotten something of value that you've always wanted, something came in. But it could also be some sort of earned income crisis or readjustment or issue or ending. You know, how you made money could be changing. So now the late degree placements, it's interesting how it's staggered so much for each of you. The very late degree placements, you could have this actually in this lunar eclipse ending drama needing attention. That's another way we like to describe full moons, is that it brings up something that needs attention in a certain area of life. You might have that happen with your physical body. So guard your physical body. If you're feeling run down, don't push yourself, take your probiotics, take your vitamin C, do your things that you have to do to protect yourself. Don't run yourself ragged. And if you have a symptom that seems concerning, be proactive and get that checked out so that you can possibly prevent there having to be an event, if you take the time to go check it out. So those are the things that are specific for Cancer that I want to talk about right now. But now we have to talk more about this energy of how to be during the eclipse cycle. I always describe the eclipse time as the time to be the spider, and I'll go into more detail about this, but the gist of it is the spider does their work, which you have done your work on certain things, and now it's a time to sit back and see what opportunities come to you. It's not a time to be super active with trying to push things out into the world or make long-term decisions unless you're making, you're trying things on, knowing that you're not seeing clearly, because the Venus retrograde energies are marching in and you're not seeing clearly in love, beauty, or money. And if you're not seeing clearly in love, beauty, or money, you have to watch the decisions you make. So it makes more sense to sit back and let the opportunities come to you instead of forcing them. So I want to talk more about that. If you haven't watched my Venus retrograde video, you have to write yourself a note to go do that after this video, because there are so many things that Venus covers: love, beauty, money, relationships, finances, artistic ventures. And when it's in retrograde, there are certain things you need to know about. So search for Annie Botticelli Venus retrograde. And let's talk more now about the general transits. General theme of this month for all signs, the tiptoe water test. When you go to the beach or somewhere where there's water, and rather than just jumping right into the water, you stick your toe in, just the tip of your toe, to see what the water temperature is. And unless you're in a very warm climate, usually the water is kind of cold, right? And so maybe you have to put your feet in and then get up to your knees. It makes me think of when I was little. I grew up in New York City, and my cousin, who was like a sister to me more than my cousin, and she was a little bit older than me, and she would taunt me, and she'd say, "Stop being such a sissy, just jump in the water." And if you've ever gone swimming in the Atlantic Ocean, it's very cold. So I would put my toe in and say, "Oh gosh, I don't want to go in," and then it would take me time to get used to it. And then she would jump right in. And I'm not saying that in general there's one way of being better than the other. But when we're talking about astrological rhythms at play, this is very poignant, because there is a time to jump right in. And there's a time to do the tiptoe water test and go in and get used to it with your ankles, and then slowly go in and get used to it with your knees, etc. And that's the time that we're working with in February, because even though we technically don't have any planets, personal planets, meaning the ones closest to us, like Mercury, Venus, Mars, are usually the ones we talk about being retrograde, the personal planets, we don't have any of that happening technically in February. But we just got past Mercury retrograde and its shadow period, and we've started Venus retrograde shadow period. Venus goes retrograde from March 4th through April 15th. Venus retrograde happens around every year and a half. I definitely recommend you listen to my Venus retrograde video because Venus rules love, beauty, and money. So everything about relationships and finances and business decisions and artistic journeys and beauty decisions all are housed under this Venus retrograde energy, even in February, because the shadow period has started. So I go into a massive amount of detail about what to do, what not to do, and why in that video that I'm not going to cover in this. So you definitely need to listen to that as a supplement to this video. And really pay attention to that for February, March, and April. So when we're in a shadow period of a retrograde, like we are in February, right? It doesn't go retrograde till March 4th, but the shadow period started at the end of January. So the whole month of February, every day we get closer to March, is getting deeper in this Venus retrograde energy. It's kind of like when you go to the beach. If you haven't crossed over the bridge yet to the island that the beach is on, you start seeing little beachwear, tourist places and little tiki huts and things that feel beachy, but you're not at the beach yet, but the beach vibe is there, So that's what a shadow period is like. It's like it starts acting as if you're there, even though you're not officially. And it's very relevant because the same rules pretty much apply for the shadow period as they do for the retrograde. And that is to not jump into anything that's a long-term commitment if you can possibly help it. Now, this is doubly so because this is a rule of the retrogrades, and this is also one of the things that we talk about with eclipses. February holds 2 eclipses. We have a full moon eclipse on February 10th, and we talked about that some. That's the lunar eclipse at 22 degrees of Leo. And we've got that solar eclipse on February 26th, that's at 8 degrees of Pisces. So when we talked about that as well, so the general energy of eclipse is kind of like that be the spider energy. You weave your web and then you let things come to you. And you act as is necessary, but not unnecessarily and not without caution. So that's the story of the energy of February is, you want to tiptoe in, you want to get used to the water, you want to try things on. It's a wonderful time for going back over things. So anything that starts with the word or the prefix RE, redoing, resting, couples therapy is something that's amazing for retrogrades. Going back to romantic places that you've been with your partner before, bringing the magic back, spending more time with your partner, anything that you're kind of returning back to within your relationship. And it doesn't have to only be a challenging thing. Sometimes Venus retrograde can bring up arguments and problems. If there are weak links in your relationship or your money space, they're going to show up because that's the job of the retrograde. But if there's sweetness there as well, then sometimes a return of the magic occurs. So it's a good time to spend more time with your honey. It's not the best time to take on a new romantic relationship or a new financial relationship if you can help it, because you have these rose-colored glasses on as it relates to money and love and beauty and artistic things, expensive items and things like that. You're not seeing clearly, so you don't want to make big decisions. But trying things on, experimenting, making small decisions, being cautious is great. Learning and education is wonderful. Trying on something for a new profession, getting some information or education that might prepare you to do something in the future. All of that is fine for the retrogrades. We just want to keep our commitments to between 4 and 6 months, if possible. Also the same goes for a move. If you have to move or you're trying to do something different. When you move someplace, go into temporary lodging, Don't get there and then buy a house, You're not seeing clearly is the whole point. And when Venus goes direct, you'll look at everything totally differently. So you want to make sure there's wiggle room with the arrangements you've made so that when you see things differently, you're not locked into too much that you then can't shift. See, that's part of the point. So it's an artist's wonderland. Retrogrades are wonderful for doing art. And they can even be great for selling art, especially when you're going back to people or doing things before that you've done for promoting it. Backing up files is one of the single most important things you can do during any retrograde. So many people are going to have their important things lost during retrograde. So if you want to spend the time doing this proactively, I always make these, do these videos early so that you can get prepared for the time. As soon as you're hearing this, it would be good for you to be backing up files. And backing up anything and seeing to security and just kind of getting everything, all your ducks in a row that way. Some sweet energies that will be present, and you can see more about why I'm calling these sweet energies, what planets are at play, etc. when you sign up for my free email newsletter. So if you go to anniehelpsyou.com and you sign up for my free email newsletter, I do a write-up a month early, a written version of the energies ahead with more details about what goes on the certain days that make certain days bring sweetness, and then the challenging days. So the sweet energies are on the 9th, 10th, 11th, 13th, 14th, 16th, 20th, 21st, 23rd, and 26th. Okay, so 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 16, 20, 21, 23, 26. Now also remember when I give you these dates that we can experience transits before or after the actual day they occur. So it's like the days around these days, you can feel the energies that are true to the transits occurring on those days. Before I give you the challenging days, I also want to remind you, if you have already signed up for my free email newsletter and you're not receiving my monthly reports, there is some sort of glitch in many email services that put group emails into your social or promotions folder. So I send these things out like clockwork, like around a month early. Every month I always have, and I will continue to do this. So if you're not getting them, it's possible that they're going either to spam, to your social or promotions or events folders, and you're not even aware of it. So look in those folders and do a search for Annie Botticelli. And you should find some there, very likely. And then you move them into your inbox to let your Gmail or whatever it is, Gmail is infamous for this, know that you want those things into your inbox. Okay, so I've had this happen quite a bit. Okay, so the challenging days are the 2nd, the 5th, 10th, 22nd, 26th, and 27th. 2nd, 5th, 10th, 22nd, 26th, 27th. You might notice that some of these dates are ones I listed for the nice transits, and that is true because there are some challenging aspects that are happening at the same time as there are sweet aspects. So you might get, a mixed bag there. So the themes for the month: tiptoe water test, avoid the deep plunge, try things on, do things short term. You can make decisions as they relate to moving some things along, but not big launches, not big new things, not investing tons of money unless you have it to spare. Definitely check out my Venus retrograde video so you can understand more. The fact that Venus is in Aries through the month is going to make people want to be rambunctious and impulsive, and that's adding to this energy where you're going to want to do something, and it may or may not be the best thing to do. So be the spider, let things come to you and leave wiggle room with how you activate those potentials. Definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, see my offerings. I teach an astrology apprenticeship program, a course on creating successful online business if you want to be free of your geography and work online. I also have a new coach certification course that includes my online business course if you'd like to be a coach as your profession. I always have new things on my blog. So check it all out at anniehelpsyou.com, and I will see you next month. Bye.